بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Welcome everyone to Maqasid Institute course on Reimagining Economics, a transdisciplinary approach. Today is the 8th session of this course, and inshallah we'll be having two discussions. I give the floor to Dr. Zaid, and then I hope our second presenter will join us soon. تفضل Professor.
جزاكم الله خير. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu. Welcome everybody to this session today that I'm holding the fort alone with that. Alhamdulillah, I have definitely Sister Amreen with us. But Dr. Ildus Rafiqov is in Kazakhstan attending a conference there, alhamdulillah. So there is, again, this is part of the incredible things that we discovered, that there's, mashallah, very lively and strong interest in Islam and Islamic solutions and reform and ijtihad in Kazakhstan and Central Asia, in all these former Soviet Unions. So I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to help us really live this Islam and deliver this Islam, and inshallah stand up for what this Islam asks us to stand up for everywhere in this world, bi'awnihi ta'ala. So with that being said, inshallah today, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلوات وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Let me go to slideshow mode. All right. Everything is right. You can see that. Right. Do you see the slideshow? Sister Amreen and everybody? Jamil. جزاكم الله خير. Right. So this is the topic for today, a Maqasidi view on the cryptocurrency debate, the challenge of conceptualization and response formulation. The approach in this session is definitely is interactive. I'm looking forward to your comments throughout this presentation. What I'm presenting represent again my insights, my take, and I definitely, since this is definitely a lively subject with big interest, then I imagine that you all have your own insights, your own experiences about how about this subject, and I would love to hear from all of you, as I go through this. Right. So here, I wanted to start this session with this story, which is, how in the 19th century, during the Ottoman rule of Egypt, Mehmet Ali Pasha tried to introduce some new inventions and innovations, especially from, the French, and that was a strong influence. So that came the issue of the faucet. And how initially the scholars there had a strong position against it. And the strong position, one of the main objections to the faucet is that if you ever studied the fiqh of Tahara, and then the first part of the fiqh of Tahara is that deals with al-miyah, how do you consider water pure enough or proper enough to use for wudu? And one of the conditions for the purity is that sometimes that it is stagnant. Can you use a stagnant water? Do you know what happened to that water? What if there's a smell? What if this and that? So there's all these conditions. So the issue of the faucet was not just simply here is something that's bringing water to you, but there's all these other complications. So there's a lot of hesitation to approve this new contraption. But then the Hanafi scholars there did that, and then they were one of the first people to approve it, and that's why. And then the faucet called Hanafiya, And then actually go through the Arab world. In many countries, we still use the word Hanafiya. And the funny thing that I grew up, using the word Hanafiya for the faucet in Iraq. And then I never really thought, to simply connect Hanafiya with the Hanafi madhab. But this is really an interesting thing that, from our history. So this is so there's always this issue of just understanding what we are dealing with is very important uh, to start any conversation. And I feel like this is one of the major challenges that we have right now with how Islamic knowledge is used to interact with the world and with the phenomena that we live, is that how we are understanding and analyzing the events and innovations all around us. The executive summary here of the talk today is that, generally speaking, cryptocurrencies do have the elements of money. So I don't think that's really the main issue here, but there are pros and cons about this alternative or monetary alternative. And then a proper Islamic position should not only just talk in terms of halal and haram. There are a lot more nuance to this than a halal and haram, and then to apply to all situations and conditions. And this is an important topic, and Muslims should not just respond to it, but should lead this conversation, or to try to find how it can be directed for good purposes, and what would be the conditions for it to be directed to doing good. The economics research phenomenon structure that we are suggesting in this course is a good way to start formulating a response, conceptualization, and even development of models of behavior to test different scenarios and see what will happen. And then the Maqasid methodology is useful for providing this framework to address contemporary challenges. One thing I wanted to touch on. So one of the main purpose of the Maqasid methodology altogether is this connection with Al-Quran Al-Kareem, with the revelation, the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Ta'ala Alayhi Wasallam. And sometimes we just miss huge opportunity. And what is the starting point? I find personally one of the most powerful and amazing starting points for me is to always start with Al-Fatiha, the opening. Almost any topic I touch, whether it is artificial intelligence, whether it is, community justice, whatever is the topic really at hand, I find always that Al-Fatiha helps anchor the conversation and the discussion that I want to approach, the research that I want to approach, the speaking point that I want to approach. And here's a quick example. The next, in about 4 or 5 minutes, I want to see how, I used Surah Al-Fatiha, how I journeyed through Surah Al-Fatiha to help me anchor myself for this conversation and for this session. So here, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, we start all of our affairs remembering that, we want to start with by remembering Allah's compassion and mercy upon us all in all its forms. And if the subject matter is money and wealth, then that is the starting point. How is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and compassion will be reflected? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, the gratitude towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everything that He has provided us, and indeed wealth, our wealth, and in terms of money or any other resources, is a great gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is also meant to benefit all of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation, Al-Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, again, okay, this emphasis on compassion and mercy and merciful application and use of everything and every resource that we have, and a mercy and compassion not only towards fellow human beings but all of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. Maliki Yawmiddin, there's 2 parts to this ayah is that ultimately kingdom, ultimately ownership belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as well as the day where we will be held accountable for how we use our wealth and all of our resources in this life. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. This challenge, wealth is a major challenge for us in this life, whether we are on the rich side, whether we are on the poor side. We definitely need to, number one, seek to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with this wealth, and we need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidance and help and support to help us navigate اهدنا الصراط المستقيم throughout the world, throughout time. We want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to the straight path every day and continuously, and find guidance and learning experiences that improve our ability to stay on الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. This is an incredible way in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Surah Al-Fatiha points us to what about all those people before me and after us who are striving and trying to find and do the right thing, whether it comes to this specific issue of money or wealth or any other issue that we face. So I mean, learn from the experiences and everybody else is struggling. And then I like to think about غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. غير المغضوب عليهم, those who know what is good, what is the right thing to do, yet they decide to do the opposite. So they know exactly they are harming, they are cheating, they are, cunning people, and then sometimes they present themselves as actually doing good. ولا الضالين is the other kind of problem that takes us away from the straight path based due to our ignorance or following our whims and desires. So these are the two major pitfalls that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in today's presentation, and anytime we try to approach a problem in our life to be able to avoid. طيب, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So we're going to the opening statement here, and this is probably something we kind of know, but we want to cover quickly. So what is money? And here we go, the principle in أصول الفقه that الحكم على شيء فرع عن تصوره, which is that before you rule on anything is that you have to have a good understanding and conceptualization of it. So what is the concept of money here? We know that humanity used all forms of materials as money, as currency specifically, and that is kind of well established. When it comes to our Islamic history, we know that number one, there is a challenge that we need to differentiate that when the fuqaha and the Muslim legal jurists, they talk about two different things sometimes. So there is the general concept that is mal or al-amwal. So al-amwal here, it really means all kind of wealth. It's not necessarily a nuqud. Nuqud then becomes specifically currency or whatever is used in transaction. So now during Muslim rule, we know that we used gold, obviously, silver, and then copper caused a huge uproar when it was introduced, called the قضية الفلوس أو مشكلة الفلوس, because why was that being used? At the time, they really needed a small change. That's one of the major reasons why the copper was introduced. But then we also had this interesting situation where we have backed papers, the sukuk, and or hawala even. So you're talking about pieces of paper backed by some value, by a valuable assets. So this was an interesting way of looking at it. Now we also know that official minting of currency did not start until much later. I mean, we're talking about this is 697. This is AD. So So it happened, I mean, a good almost 100 years or so, I mean, less than 100 years after the, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam times. It is in the Umayyad period, during Abdullah bin Marwan, that is first one to mint, coins, and then it had all these Islamic scriptures. So the top one is the pictures is from the Umayyad period, and sometimes you can see even pictures of the humans, and in some other places there are pictures of animals, which is an interesting thing. The bottom one is the rounded one is from the Abbasi time, and then the square one is from the Andalusi period. So here, again, building on this concept of money, so you find Imam Ghazali, you find more contemporary people like Imam Al-Shatibi talk about the objectives behind money. And here, again, money as in they talk about amwal, so it is wealth in general that includes money. So these then objectives apply to the discussion of currencies that we have today. So this is again is important to know where we're coming from, without being strictly having to bound ourselves with taqlid. So here, Imam Ghazali in Al-Mustasfa discusses that, the Sharia objectives that, and then he linked it basically to the other four objectives of the Sharia, and actually link it to itself, which Imam Al-Ghazali, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, himself established. Now, the coining of the five principles of the or maqasid or objectives of Sharia came from first from an Imam Al-Ghazali, building on the work of his Sheikh Al-Imam Al-Juwayni, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh. So he's saying that, well, it's to protect we need to use the faith to protect, we need to use wealth and money to protect our faith, our lives, our minds, our intellect, our families, our lineage, and our wealth itself. Now we move on to Imam Ibn Ashur, who was a famous Maliki jurist from, lived like, he lived almost to 100 years and died in the early 1970s. So he was one of the major people who revived Maqasid Sharia thinking. So, and he has this five principles that he used, and many people quote him. That he said, okay, well, the five objectives here from money and wealth, but his actually conversation or his discussion is closer to currency, to the discussion of nuqud and currency. So, so he's saying that the five important objectives here, the first of all called hifd al-amwal, protection of wealth, but he means that we need a currency that protects its value, that its purchase and value, so that he considered that to be against inflation and other, because now we understand that Ibn Ashur is living during a time when fiat currency is everywhere. So he's realizing that we are living in a different time and age. So he does not, and most of the major Muslim jurists and the major fiqh academies or fatwa councils, I do not know that they prohibit fiat money, because that will actually create a huge haraj and fitna if they go ahead and do that. So they will just justify it in terms of maslaha. This is what's in the best interest of the people, given the time and place that we live in. So given that is we have to use fiat money or this nuqud, so we need to have this protection of the value. It is important to know the ownership of this money. How do we track ownership? Do we have the proper accounting system or proper way of asserting ownership? And then there's the issue of separations and divisibility. Where does my wealth start and end? Where does your wealth and or money or holdings or balances starts and ends, to avoid disputes and to know different parties' ownership. Circulation. So this is an interesting concept because now he's talking about رواج الأموال. That for money to be effective, it needs to have acceptance and circulation. And then part of this circulation, it also needs to, one application of the circulation is the investment, تنمية الأموال. And then there is the concept of justice and fairness, العدل في الأموال. And then that is just also how money is used. This is prohibition of riba, so on and so forth. So again, I'm definitely going fast through these slides because, alhamdulillah, we do have quite a bit of materials to go over today. But let me just have a moment here to stop and see if you have any question about what I just covered so far. Or any points, any discussion. Okay. So if you are good with this so far, I know you're all on mute, just FYI. So if you wanted to unmute yourself, that will be good. Fine. So another way of looking at this, and again, you can jump in if you didn't have a chance. So the way I studied money and currency in modern economic thinking, we think of money in terms not of its, ultimate purpose or justice or any of this consideration. We simply think of money as whatever is used as a function as money, and it's what are the functions, what are the key functions of money. So here we say it's medium of exchange. We use it to buy, products and services. The unit of account. We use it for pricing, and to for accounting purposes. And then as a store of value, we save wealth in the form of money. So with this being said, and sometimes we used to say a unit of deferred, payment, that is in denomination of debts, for example. So with these three functions or four functions, can you think of another function of money that should be considered, that is not being considered here? Maybe based on the Maqasid that was discussed with you from Imam Ghazali, from Imam Shatibi, and others. Oh, that's it. This really covers all the functions of money, and we are happy with it. Yeah, so
I just want to say that mm, before it is a medium of exchange, the most important function is the store of value.
okay.
So even if it is not a medium of exchange,
No,
there used to be like a barter or
no.
system. We can exchange with each other like goods. Having a medium of exchange definitely ease the transaction and all these things, but having a store of value leads towards the Maqasid approach. Like Maqasid, it serves the Maqsad. If it is not a good store of value, it even if it is a medium of exchange, it is not serving the purpose. Maqsad, hifz al-mal.
Yeah. Now, this is excellent point. Alhamdulillah. Yes, so historically, to the best of our knowledge, that the earliest currencies first started as a great store of value, and then and that includes, that's why like gold and silver. Now the other thing also was very convenient about, but there were other forms of store of value. But there's the visibility of gold and silver that was also very important aspects that made it possible or very useful. And then become unit of account. That's where the divisibility was kind of important, and then that ended up being as a medium of exchange. And a quick comment on modern challenge, for example, with dollarization. Dollarization is like when the dollar takes over a currency of a local, country or local market. Is that sometimes it starts with the unit of account, because people don't know what will be the purchasing power of a local currency, and then sometimes then they proceed to store of value. They start storing and saving their money in the dollar or other foreign currencies, all the way to, and then get to a medium of exchange. So that will be kind of transactions when the dollar takes over a transaction, and sometimes then ends up ultimately to being considered as the formal currency of a country. And so far, like there's like 3-4 countries in the world that uses the dollar formally as a currency. So Ecuador, and at one time East Timor, and so on and so forth. A few other countries that have done that. So, but this is, still using, there's the functional use of money. And if we can think of other functions, it will be good just to hear from you. Now jumping to what are, go ahead.
Yes,
تفضل.
جزاك الله. I think I just need to add maybe a little bit on the first one. When I work, they give me money in exchange of my effort.
Correct.
So this is maybe, I don't know, you can put it in the first one, or
So it's under medium of exchange. So we exchange labor for money, and we exchange products for money or for currency. And that then I can take that currency and exchange it for other people's labor. Somebody come to repair something at your house and something like that. Yeah. So that's a good point. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تفضلي.
I can
I
add
think
that
go ahead.
medium of exchange is when there is like a transaction of goods and service. But it's a very good point by Brother Muhammad, that ujrat, like the ujra of a person, is something very different. Like it should be in a kind of money that is stable over time. Because if it is not, and your contract of employment is fixed, but if the money in which your contract is written, it should also be something that actually gives you the total, like equivalent amount what you deserve. Because if the medium in which your contract is written is not a good store of value, over time, when you work as an employee, your experience will increase, but the money may be depreciate, and it is not a good representative of your ujra.
Yeah. I want to, before going to, I would definitely want to hear from Dr. Mehdi, but what I actually now, because of your comment and Brother Muhammad's comment, the interesting thing here, when we come from capitalist thinking, we take out the human factors. So when Brother Muhammad says like, okay, well, that is exchanging just products for each other, and impersonal exchanges but then there's also this money that connects us with each other. When I bring somebody to my house, or I go perform a service to somebody else, I am delivering this lecture or this session with you, and then we get compensated. There's a whole other set of Islamic ethics that goes with it. That's something that's separate or different from when we just exchange, which makes it like one of the functions possibly of money, that it's something that connects us that we can use it for silat rahim, that we can use it to build relationships among ourselves. That, I mean, impersonal thinking from capitalist economics do not want to get involved in. But it is the social aspect which we're going to try to cover today is very important for our attempt to develop economic research phenomena approach to, in this case, for example, to money. Allah alam. Dr. Mahdi, please tafadhal. You raise your hand.
Thank you. This is just my ignorance here. This looks to me more like a modern definition of money here, and I wonder if this idea even of unit of accounts, is it something that was always there? I mean, do we have in our tradition the equivalence between like gold dinars versus they have like copper coins, they have different types of coins here. Were we able to exchange some copper versus gold? I mean, did we have any equivalence the way we have between a dollar versus like pennies and things like that? So that's the first question I have here, and then the second question, which is, we like to rely on gold standard, gold standard for stability of the money here. But even if we were to work in a barter economy, we could have inflation. It has nothing to do with the money. We have a drought, we have any exogenous events that might drive up the prices, whether or not we have a gold standard, we have any type of money and something like that here. And so, those are my two questions here I have.
Now, these are great points. One of the easier one to start with, yes, from the time of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, there was kind of an exchange ratio between dinar and dirham. And if I'm not mistaken, it's like a dinar is about 20 dirham. So there is something like that. And okay, the dinar and dirham that we're talking about, it is from the Roman dinar, which is like, again, dinaris and drachma. So even these terms, sometimes we think that they are purely Islamic. These are terms that we actually adopted from the Romans and the Greeks. Maybe they also, if you go back, maybe they adopted it from the Phoenicians or some other people. But at least the term itself sometimes has a sacredness in our mind, like we call it the Islamic dinar. Even though the dinar itself is not really originally, to the best of my knowledge, came from Arab or Muslim word. But I can stand to be corrected. So this is one thing. And then now over time, that ratio changed. And then I have to really pull the right reference because the Umayyad time had a different ratio, because it all depends on the weight of the gold and the weight of the minted silver coins. What is the content in that? And there's always the challenge of and we can either get to it or we'll like بخس الأموال or بخس الفلوس. Sometimes when people shave the currency, and sometimes the shaving of the currency can happen officially, that the Khalifa or the Sultan decides to produce a gold coin with slightly less gold in it, or silver slightly less, and that was a big issue, because then without telling people, so they can just go ahead and do it, and then they save themselves some money. So that's one way of like debasement of currencies called, and that's why sometimes like you had with the currency, they had ridges on the side around it to try to show that this is full weight and not being shaved. This currency is not being shaved. Now, going to the other good question that you raised, accounting, for accounting purposes. So there is a big discussion in Islamic fiqh about al-mithli wal-qimi. So mithli is that when things are exchanged or valued based on the kind. Qimi is when things are exchanged or valued in terms of the value. on it is how much just replacement cost or just how much the value of that item. So obviously, once we go into the theme, to finding the value of something, then that is accounting. Now that is a unit of account. Unit of account also applies, in terms of debt. So, I mean, that is, you have to have some kind of accounting system to, this is what becomes like the unit of deferred payment. Sometimes it's rolled under unit of account. So that's definitely present throughout Muslim history, throughout Muslim jurist treatment of contract and construction of contracts. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers you, Brother Mahdi. So when it comes to the cryptocurrencies, again, many of you know this. I'm going quickly, but this is a picture of like we call a cryptocurrency farm. It's just really massive number of computers that are crunching numbers. And I do have a hand up, and then I'll get you, Brother Cash, in just a minute. I just really, this is how but it's basically digital units made of very long, unique numbers of combinations. And there's this important aspect of this technology. I mean, yes, it's a computer intensive processing, mining process, and then it's this distributed ledger aspect of it is a fundamental feature of cryptocurrencies. Brother Kashif, تفضل, if you would like to share your thoughts.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. You mentioned that historically the currencies took the journey of becoming a store of value first, and then a unit of account, and then eventually a medium of exchange. But in the case of dollar, it took the opposite path. What's the source of this information?
No, I did not say the dollar took a different route. And even even the store of value story, it's not the full. I mean, there was uniqueness and short supply. So that's why, like, we have seashells used as money. It's not because it's valuable in its own sake. It was just it was scarce, and people were able to think about it. It's like when we talk about cryptocurrency, it takes time to create this cryptocurrency by crunching computing power. So think about, these are not just any seashells that you just walk around the sea and you pick up. These are got to be like of a certain size and quality, and something like that, maybe a little bit of polishing happening to it, and so on and so forth, to make it unique and scarce enough to be used. But themselves, these shells do not have, my understanding, I did not live like in an island or nation to know if they have maybe some intrinsic value, but that is just how, let's say. But once we moved to store of value, that became a lot more powerful and a lot more universal currency, like gold and silver, because everybody kind of agreed that this has a value that can, that people appreciate in different countries and different markets. Now, when it comes to the dollar, again, I'm giving a very quick overview. So the dollar's journey is actually very interesting. We know, like in the 1800s in the United States, I mean, we didn't have a central authority producing dollars or money. Actually, we had individual banks producing their own currencies throughout the United States of America. And many times when that bank goes out and produce way too much money, then that bank folds, and a lot of people lose that fiat money that they had. It's not 100% clear to me what was backing this money. Usually, in this case, my thinking is that it is just the assets of that bank and the reputation of that bank. Think of it as a well-known merchant in a market or in the city, and he is issuing pieces of paper. This is on the full faith and credit of this merchant or that merchant. And then people just take it as, because they trust that well-known merchant and wealthy merchant. So now like think of it like a credit instrument. So in this case, this is what was happening in U.S. History. Now, until we get to the formation, there was an effort to establish a central bank, but but then people rejected the central bank because they immediately realized that people in New York and people who control finance and control the biggest banks will have a strong power over the agricultural south of the United States. So they really rebelled against it. So like Andrew Jackson is, was famous, one U.S. president who dissolved the first attempt to establish, a central bank in the United States until early 1900. The central bank was, the Federal Reserve Bank was established and it was designed. So, and then, well, at that point we had, even before that, we did have a currency. There was a currency being issued, but it was backed by gold and silver and had an exchange rate. So we had the golden dollar and we had silver, and they had an exchange ratio. And that was, of course, was not an easy relationship. In the 1800s was a huge, complaints that the gold standard is really hurting farmers. And you have to understand also in the context of supply of gold. So suddenly we discover massive, gold resource in California, for example. There was a gold rush. Then suddenly you have a huge supply of increase in the supply of gold, and that really created a huge inflation, created a huge imbalance between gold and silver and the exchange ratio between them, and that's where we end up with melting of coins. Because why would if you just exchange a coin for silver, then you get shortchanged. But if you take that gold and melt it, or take that silver, melt it, and sell it as as a raw material, you might get more gold for it. And that was a major challenge that happened. So, and this is important for us, for me to mention and to share with you, is because this is what we call the social aspect. We can think in terms of macroeconomic theory, we can think in terms of microeconomic theory, but this aspect of how people actually use money in daily life, what are our experience and the challenges, sometimes that I continuously find it severely lacking in our discourse, because we just do not know our human history and wisdom of all the challenges that we went through, that I hope that we can definitely reflect on. But I hope so. Then the gold-backed dollar was adopted, and it continued in some form of shape until of course Bretton Woods, and then afterward just when everything collapsed in 1973, and from that time onward the dollar was just pure fiat money. Of course it is backed by, now this is another conversation but personally my quick comment on it is that the US, just one last comment, is that US dollar and currencies in general, my view is that it's not backed by nothing. I call it is backed by a social contract of an expected purchasing power, that I expect this dollar to buy certain goods and services when I go to the market, and I expect that value to stay stable. And if that is messed up, then citizens in the country will not accept this and will punish the ruling government والله أعلم. تفضل. Please go
So,
ahead.
some of the discussions I've read of older scholars, even Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah, they differentiate between currency and money.
Yes.
So currency can be anything, anything can be a medium of exchange. Even the quotes from Imam Malik, who says that even leather can be a medium of exchange. So
Right.
medium of but for money, they I've seen three things that they mentioned, that it has to be widespread enough for a lot, so that it's available to a larger group of people, not a select few people can access it. And then it is a unit of account. People
Yeah.
actually measure value in it. And number
Yeah.
three is that it's issued by a known central authority. It's not something majhul. But for something to be a medium of exchange, it can be anything. Two people can agree on anything and they can exchange things, but that's not currency. As soon as the exchange happens, the currency is expired, it matures, but money stays in circulation. And for that to happen, it has to fulfill these three criteria.
And John, I agree that this is the understanding. But again, once you say generally agreed, that is, if there's anything I know about fiqh and my study of fiqh and my experience with the leading Muslim jurist of our time, is that we hardly have an ijma or complete agreement on anything. There is always massive differences of opinion, but there is this general understanding, and I actually going to check to touch on this later on in the conversation. So inshallah, specifically this issue of a central authority, I'll be inshallah discussing this. But I agree with you. I covered this point that there's a difference between mal and nuqud, wealth and currency. That's definitely, and sometimes the conversation, when you read books of fiqh, you have to really make sure that you understand what they're talking about. And even when different people talk about maqasid of money, Imam Ghazali is closely talking about wealth. Imam Ibn Ashur is closely talking about currency. And this is Rawaj al-Amwal, for example, it is widely used and accessed by people and circulated. It's an important thing. But then this also gets complicated with this dulatan bayna al-aghniya minkum. It's not, wealth should not circulate among only the wealthy. So there is that confusion that are we talking about money? Are we talking about wealth concentration? Because you can have the poor continue to use small units of the currency or have very little of money, but it is there. Right. But this is good contribution. So here we're saying so we're talking that here, when we talk about cryptocurrencies, it's important to know, okay, so this is a new development. We have not had this before in our history, so we need to be careful how we want to analyze this topic. And then there's definitely, we need to look carefully at this blockchain technology and the distributed ledger technology, specifically to the building blocks of the cryptocurrencies. And then it is important to visit this issue because when we expect it might have a very strong implications for in the future, then it behooves us to understand what this technology is and how to use it for, if there is a way to utilize it for better purposes. So, and cryptocurrencies might also be used by central banks and economic blocks. So this is an interesting also development that you can definitely look at in terms of different scenarios as how this cryptocurrencies can evolve in the future. So here, when it comes to the debate, we're starting now the debate, and one serious kind of conversation we had at the European Fiqh Council presentation, and that was a presentation by my dear Ustad and Sheikh, Dr. Ali Al-Qaradaghi. Then I had these issues with how contemporary jurists are dealing with the issue of cryptocurrencies. And I summed it in a way that the reason that you're saying it is haram, I do not really think that they are valid reasons to say it is haram. And the people who say it is halal, I don't think it's a valid reason to say it is halal. So I have a problem with both sides. I'm not happy with either one. And then I end up with this middle position, which maybe doesn't make anybody happy. But I do think that it is a nuanced position, because this is a nuanced subject. So one of the first issue here that we are not sure is that it's digital, so there is no mahal aqd, so it has no real representation. So now we're going back to the issue of, it's gold, it's leather, it is something I can put my hands on. It's something that has qima, and I know at one point we had a long discussion about what is an intrinsic value, and there's a huge difference when you use that terminology, intrinsic value, in modern day investment jargon versus what some people are, we'd like to say that gold has intrinsic value, which may or may not have, depends on the time and place that you are in. So, and the technology we are using. So that is one complaint. And here, the issue is that, well, if this is the criteria we're using, there's mahal aqd or no mahal aqd. So how then are we talking, why are we also now discussing that fiat money does not have a clear mahal aqd? Mahal aqd, just something that you can, of consideration. So if you don't approve of cryptocurrencies because they don't have mahal aqd, then you are going to disapprove and prohibit the use of all fiat money. And now this will have major consequence. Now, almost no scholar would really want to be the cause of a major disruption by saying that all fiat money has a major and not valid. Now, it is not real and with no intrinsic value. I guess there is this gharar concept that is always, I hear a lot in the conversation of the fuqaha. But this is again, there is intrinsic value. What is the intrinsic value of a piece of leather? What is the intrinsic value of any of these forms? Of non-traditional forms of money that have been, used throughout history, and so it's just like there's no consistent. This is not a consistent, methodical way of objecting to cryptocurrencies, and then all of them. It is not backed by gold and silver. Well, that is very few currencies are backed by gold and silver. Again, that leather example was not backed by, like Imam Malik approved of, is not backed. Most people accepted it. It was in circulation. It has scarce supply. So, and then it is a waste of resources and computing power. So that's one objection that was I've heard used. But then this is, again, using, you can apply that. It's not a consistent, it's a good concern that there's massive computing power and energy being used to produce cryptocurrencies, and for what end, to what reason. Obviously, people who are spending that energy find it valuable, and then they go ahead and do it. Some of the other consideration that we have. So money gains acceptance because this is something that we also need to understand. And most of the time, or like typically, we say why the currency, the rupees, and of Indonesia has is accepted as a, as a currency. It's like, number one, if the government accepts it for tax payment purposes, and the government use it to compensate, contractors or employees and so on and so forth. And once you have this central authority establishing this currency and establishing expected value, initial value, then from there comes money becomes accepted and used. In one interesting case study in the northern part of Iraq, the Kurdish part of Iraq, after the Iraqi government collapsed and Saddam Hussein's rule kind of collapsed. Before that happened. So there was, it's after that, there was an intermediate period. Interesting situation happened. The Kurdish region continued to use the old Iraqi currency. So they have old Iraqi currency, they continue to use it, continue to be accepted, even though there's no central bank backing it. While the central government who took over from the old Iraqi government, the Saddam Hussein government, started issuing its own currency, backed by the new central bank of Iraq. But they were producing so much of this new currency that it was losing value quickly. There was a lot of, inflation happening. So you have two Iraqi currencies side by side. One is supported by the central bank of the state, but people don't want to use. And the other one that is has no backing. It just exists, but it is scarce. There's no more people. There's no more of that currency being printed. So that continued to be used for. We're talking years, and they were trying between the dollar and between that Iraqi currency, but that did happen. So it's a very interesting situation to see how money in different periods of time was used, was accepted, was just simply if people use it as a form of payment. So that is users' trust and acceptability. This is what, like in this case. And then there is this what we call speculative demand. So speculative demand is, I see, an important reason why cryptocurrencies gets acceptance. Speculative demand that I'm going to hold it because I think other people will find it valuable in the future. So Elon Musk comes along and he praises Doge coin, which is a form of cryptocurrency. That was even the founder or the creator of Dogecoin that we created as a joke. But suddenly Elon Musk is, start talking about it, and people start buying this currency because, maybe Elon Musk's companies or, will start using it, maybe this, maybe that. So that was a speculative demand. Then I kind of discovered that, in many cases, as soon as a new currency, because right now we're talking about thousands of these cryptocurrencies. But once it is being produced by certain group with name recognition, with let's say Microsoft, or like remember the case when Facebook wanted to create its own currency, and that was a huge issue. So because it has name recognition, a lot of people will jump in and buy massive amount of this currency because, let's say, it starts at 1 cent or a fraction of a cent per unit of that currency. So a wealthy person, or like people with access, with money availability, with cash, have absolutely no problem to drop in. Imagine at the level of individual, okay, I'm going to put $1,000 into this, and if it ended up being nothing, it doesn't matter to me. This $1,000 is like really pocket change for me. Now imagine bigger organizations or financial institutions who will drop $100,000 because for them it's a pocket change, and all they want is that if this currency that is being purchased at, for example, 1/10 of a US cent, if it just becomes 2/10 of US cents, now they double their wealth. And that's an incredible amount of profit. And that definitely happened when Elon Musk got in, and that currency shot up 10 times from that point that he talked about it, or like really more like 6-7 times folds. Now imagine if you knew that this happened, or you just immediately put some investment in that currency when it was a fraction of a cent. Imagine how much return. So that is happening in the area of what we call speculative demand. Of course, there is speculative demand for money that Keynes talks about, and I'm talking about this is speculative acceptance of these currencies, which is very interesting to notice. If anyone would like to, I'm happy to hear. تفضل Dr. Oliver.
Every time I'm still staying, I still don't know how to raise my hand in Zoom.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that works, alhamdulillah.
And my internet is not working well either, but subhanallah. Alhamdulillah.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, quick question, because we hear often the argument that cryptocurrency are very volatile, which is true, but it's also true with a lot of money. You know, I've been teaching in Egypt. I was paid in Egyptian guild. Couldn't do anything with the money. I came back in the US and the money was worth nothing. And so I have a bunch of monopoly money. I mean, it's called a monopoly because there is nothing you can do with it, and nobody wanting to trade with that money. And so, okay, you know, to me, it's worth like the same thing as a Dogecoin or something like that, where you cannot do nothing with it because it's backed by nothing, it's worth nothing, and so every system has this, you know, has this limit. So to me, there is no real good solution here.
Yes.
I mean, to me, what I see as personally one of the advantage of the cryptocurrency, some of the money are backed by really good technologies, and they are very smart people. They write some white papers. They have some very great ideas. And so when they issue coins, those coins are much more, I mean, in a sense, somewhat more stable because they are backed by some great ideas. It's not gold, it's not silver, but this is something I might trust more than a general in Egypt. And so, you know, it's there is a good solution, but this is here what I think about the
yeah. So just to quickly answer you before going to Brother Muhammad. So yes, generally speaking, so this is the problem. So you say like, oh, crypto coins fluctuate in value, but well, also many other currencies fluctuate in value. Now, when is the last time the Egyptian pound or went up in value? It's very hard for me to remember that actually. If you look at from the 80s until now, there was a massive drop in the value of the Egyptian pound. And the Turkish lira, it used to be in the millions of liras per dollar. And then they created a new lira unit, and now again, I remember when like the Turkish lira was 1-to-1 with the dollar, and now it is I don't know, it's like 1,000 or something. No, it's not less than 1,000. But it is not 20, close to 20, or maybe more, 20 something. So you can imagine
it's about 30 something now.
It's about 30. So imagine. It was 2 years ago when I went to Turkey. So most of this currency, actually, I see it dropping down. It's really hard, and of course, we're benching it next to the dollar. That's sometimes very problematic by itself. So it will be interesting if we bench it against the gold, what would happen. But sometimes even to bench it against the gold, we don't do that directly. We bench it against the dollar and convert the dollar to. We go through that process. But it's good if we can have a track record based on some commodity. So that's the challenge that actually we see with cryptocurrencies that go up and down in value, which raises, so one of the slides I will discuss is that if you say it's a unit of account, or if you say it's a store of value, what kind of store of value is this that fluctuate this widely? With that, let me, mashallah, I'll go with Brother Muhammad and then Brother Kashif. Brother Muhammad, go ahead, please.
First of all, I'm not expert in this field, but what I just want to add a little bit, that's just I thought of the ideas during the discussion, the idea or the concept of stability. Now we see like we have the dollar is issued by a country, by United States, but United States can come and raise the federal, the Federal Reserve can raise the interest value, and cause lots of countries like Egypt or Turkey or something to suffer, because they the value of the dollar, instead of being 3 guineas and sterling, or I don't know what they call it in Egypt. I think guinea.
Yeah, guinea. Yeah, and then sterling, pound.
Yeah. Now it's, I don't know, 30 or something. It's the rate is crazy, and that caused the Egyptian economy almost to collapse. Same thing with Turkey. Now there is another idea, which is, I think it's a good idea, with the blockchain concept and the decentralization of control of currency. Now, if we have crypto, but after a while, if it reaches its stability level, then no country like United States or China or Russia or these big players, they can come and play with it. That's my just maybe initial thoughts, but I don't know. That's the idea.
That's why. So this is an assumption, or this is a promise. Is this a reality? Has it happened so far? No. I mean, the value is up and down. Is this what will happen in the future? That's why, like, one of the points that it's good that you're moving the conversation towards that direction, is that what future scenarios are we envisioning? So part of the Maqasid methodology, we say future orientation. What's going to happen? How do we see different future scenarios playing out? And then inshallah, we'll cover this in a slide, So I think Brother Kashif raised his hand, and then we can go to Shahadat. Kashif?
So what I wanted to say was that if we look at the maqasid of the objective of issuing the cryptocurrency, we might be able to place it in our conversation correctly. So there are a few things I want to comment on. First is that we're comparing the fatwa that go in favor of the current fiat currencies that include fractional reserve banking and quantitative easing and credit-based lending, and then we are comparing that with if crypto has similar issues, we shouldn't complain about. So the first thing is that crypto was Bitcoin specifically was issued because of this this no limit of how much currency is issued. So a limited supply of currency was introduced because they didn't want the currency to be unlimited, and so that the value becomes stable. On the other hand, the people who were in favor of the credit-based system of money supply, they say that money cannot have an upper limit. If there is an upper limit, then there will be run on the banks, and there will be situations where there won't be enough money to make transactions. So these are two very, I'd say these are contradictory objectives that both currencies are trying to achieve. If we go by the cryptocurrency thought process, then we can easily place things that are we can replace commodities with cryptocurrencies, and then the arguments that you've mentioned, they become relevant. For instance, there was a calculation that just for Bitcoin to stay active, in order for it to exist, it takes more electricity than the whole of Argentina does. So imagine
Right.
imagine a currency taking more energy resources than a country just to stay there. It's not that it's being for it to being pumped
Correct.
in, it's using that
Correct.
kind of energy. It won't stay. So uh, uh, it's the intrinsic part of it, that the amount of um, effort it takes for you to keep that value is much more than the amount of value uh, it would have in it can store actually. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if we take this argument, then we don't have to over engineer it. Well, we can use the commodities that are already in limited supply, and nobody can control them. When you have gold, it will stay. It will sustain its value no matter
Right.
who is ruling, and whether you're alive or whether there's electricity. It works. It's a far better solution in terms of that. And in
So,
terms of the fatwa, at least the ones that I'm sorry,
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
jumping to
Good points.
another.
Excellent points.
So at least in Pakistan, the fatwa that legitimize fiat currencies are based on a misunderstanding of how fiat currencies work, and there have been some papers issued uh, by the Sharia Academy here in Pakistan, which discuss this, that it's an assumption that it's nuqud based on gold, but there is no gold.
Yes,
It's
that's
so
that's right. This is exactly what you're. I'm glad that you made these points, because this is exactly the contradiction that we are dealing with. If it is digital, well, all money is right now is digital. But even if it is gold, it can also become digital, and can be derivative on the gold. But the challenge that you're saying is that, so this is what we say, like I'm gonna try to visit in the conversation, is that there is macro level of dealing with currency. There is micro level. There is also social aspect of dealing with currency. So for example, one big challenge here is that if you just simply take the example of Bitcoin, if the production of Bitcoin has an upper limit and it will stop, what will happen after that if it continues to increase in value? This is not a new challenge or phenomenon. This is a well-known problem in economic history and currency history and monetary history. This leads to a deflation of prices, and stagnation. Because if I think that my money will worth more tomorrow, so I have every incentive to not use this money today and wait until tomorrow or after tomorrow, or I will not want to, if I just imagine if money keeps increasing up in value, then if somebody, if I borrowed money from somebody, then I have an incentive to keep it with me as long as possible, because increasing the value before I return it, for example, back, and then maybe buy or whatever it is. So just I don't want to, or actually if I venture to gold or to something like that, now Bitcoin is increasing in value versus gold, and then I return back the value of the amount of gold rather than Bitcoin itself. So there is a major challenge in contracting and this and that if a currency is depreciating, if prices are depreciating, and I agree with you. And then become the issue, or so what exactly is the problem we're trying to solve? So I want to make a very quick comment, because I'm going to inshallah I'm going to try to cover this point in the next slide. It is part of the conversation. but I want to address this again. This, how much currency or money is created by the central bank. And then, of course, then we have also the banking system through credit creation system or through the fractional reserve system. So is this immune? Would this happen or not happen when we had Bitcoin? One way to think about it, well, look, Bitcoin is just like any other deposited form of currency. Banks can use it to create more loans. I mean, whether 10-to-1 ratio, or the credit system will apply, the credit system of creating money will apply to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is not immune from being used for these purposes. The other hand, there is the purchasing power of money. It is something that responsible, independent central banks with a charter that says we have to keep the purchasing power, the store of value of money stable. It's a very important thing, at least from my observation of the Federal Reserve Bank in America, from European Central Bank, so on and so forth. And one of the reasons, like when now it hits the unit of account, for example, the statement is that the American financial market is built around 2% inflation rate. If you go beyond that, then you create huge problem and dysfunction as a unit of account and unit of deferred payment. So there are huge consequences to that. So that even people in finance would like to have the value of money, purchasing power of money stable. And now there's a whole other form of conversation and debate on how to keep it stable, because things that we are buying with our money do not stay the same quality, and abundance go up and down, so on and so forth. There's a lot of complicated conversation here. So here we just, in a sense, I'm trying to open the conversation and discussion and get all your input, all this good input. With that, I think Brother Shahadat had something he wanted to share, and then we go to Fawzi. Shahadat, please.
Jazakallah khair. Yeah, in relation to the point about speculation, I think it's worth remembering that speculation specifically is a feature of the fiat currency system more so than anything else. In order to speculate, so when you talk about speculation, you're talking about moving the value of commodities, assets, currencies, etc. In order for you to be able to move the value of things, you have to have an enormous quantity of the base currency itself to be able to do that. So this is why I say it's actually one of the features of the fiat system. So if you look at the number of dollars, for example, that are utilized in the real economy versus the number of dollars that are utilized in the financial economy, the vast majority of currency transactions occur in the financial economy. Why? Because what they're doing is they're utilizing the dollar to move the value of assets and commodities and prices. This is why you have so much price instability in the global economy, because essentially what you have is people that are trying to accumulate wealth, make money through the activity of speculation. So that also obviously has a knock-on effect on for cryptocurrencies. A lot of the volatility that we're witnessing in the crypto market is because of the speculation. So you made the point about how the likes of Elon Musk and I think large investor institutions like BlackRock, Vanguard, who have spent enormous amounts of money trying to acquire these cryptocurrencies. Why? Because essentially for them, I think what they're trying to do is diversify their portfolio of assets and also popularize these technologies as well, make them normalize them and make them popular. So
correct.
Yeah, exactly.
No. This is excellent point that you're raising, and so again, interesting, incredible the case studies here when it comes to speculation on currencies. We know, for example, like George Soros played an incredible role in betting against the British pound, and like he defeated they call it the central bank, Bank of England, and so this is. I mean, of course, he didn't do it just by himself, but he started kind of an avalanche process by accumulating, and that's why we have all this foreign and options on currencies and so on and so forth, and arbitrage. And then if you just sometimes leverage, and that's again the credit systems, how it works. If I have $100 billion and I leverage into $1 trillion, or in this case, let's say trillion pound, and then suddenly I can really destabilize a bank from an industrialized and wealthy country like England. And then he made massive amount of money from that speculative attack. And then he lost a lot of money on speculating against the Russian central bank, the Russian ruble, and this was something like Shahadat you might like. I mean, one of the reasons they were able to withstand it, they had strong gold reserves and then less exposure to international market. But it was a fascinating case study. And then he went again and made a lot of money from the collapse of the Asian currencies in the 1998 big crisis. So the Thailand baht and Indonesian rupees and the Malaysian ringgit and so on and so forth. So this is just to emphasize the point that yes, massive speculation can happen with currency. Now, with the US dollar is a very interesting thing. It's like this neutral assured destruction situation happening here. Number one, let's just say, to put it in context. So, like if the British pound was like a sea, the US dollar is like more of an ocean. So it takes a lot more effort to destabilize. Now, not only that, the second aspect here of it, for example, which one country can potentially create some destabilization. Right now, China comes to mind as number one country, followed by Japan. Now, Japan is a US ally, it's probably not going to do that, and it is. But in the case of China, what happens if China drops massive amount of dollars? Now, number one, these dollars are mostly held in treasuries and US bond. To sell massive amount of, so they have to sell these bonds, and if you sell a lot of these bonds quickly, then their value is going to get dropped quickly. So their $1 trillion US debt they're holding, if they dump it very quickly, then they are going to shoot themselves in the foot. So there's a huge losses that then they will initially incur. Now the second thing that will happen is that if this leads to a drop in the value of the dollar, so now all of Chinese exports gonna increase in value or in cost. So then there's a good chance that their markets their exports will be hurt internationally. So this is just sometimes I just want you to understand there's a macro picture here that is incredibly important when you're trying to reimagine a world. And to understand what is the source of like the power of the US dollar. Now, all that being said, it is eroding. I mean, was the US dollar stronger 20 years ago? Yes, it was. 10 years ago, yes, it was stronger. So there is, we call it in economics, secular tendency, but this is not clear until now because almost every other currency is afraid of playing the role of the dollar or is not ready to play the role of the dollar. The euro was supposed to play a very important role, but it was the incredible conservative attitude of the European Union that prevented it. And the mess with their local finances prevented it from playing that role, among many other reasons. Now, the other hand, when it comes to the cryptocurrencies, so here's what I would like to say. But when I look at cryptocurrencies, I see number one, again, we're talking about thousands of currencies. So that is major confusion. when we talk. Some of them backed by gold, some of them backed by central banks, some of them. So it is really important to know what are you talking about, or at least at what category of cryptocurrencies that we are talking about. And then after that, like I said, it is we've seen the massive swing in the value of the Bitcoin, the oldest, most established one, but same thing with Ethereum and other coins. So that and a lot of this is because of strong speculative movements that are more easily it can happen more easily when the size of the currency is smaller. So like that, we talk about the phenomena or like the situation of ihtikar, monopolization, somebody who's going to accumulate, even if it's at high cost. But if you corner the market and then you dump it and whatever you can raise the value of that currency, so on and so forth. And throughout history, the same thing happened. People try to corner the gold or the silver. Some people really try to do that, and that led to periods of a strong fluctuation in the value of these commodities. In the past 10 years, and especially in the past couple of years, China has been accumulating a massive amount of gold. Russia has been accumulating lots of gold. Venezuela was trying to dump gold, and then Russia was taking the gold in planes and moving it to Russia, so on and so forth. But like one of the reasons, like gold has increased in value, is because it's accumulation. So again, what I would just want you to understand, everybody here to understand, is that gold will cause many challenges for us to use as a currency. And I don't want this another discussion, but we need a full discussion only on gold currency. But when we are critiquing some system, there are major challenges in all of these other options that we are presenting. And with that, let me go to Brother Fawzi.
Jazakallah khairan. So basically, what I wanted to discuss was, again, something you have already mentioned about how is the money created, the value proposition to our community. And as Brother Kashif had already mentioned, the electricity usage vis-a-vis the environmental issues we have today is something that definitely needs to be looked at from the value of what is the value creation of this one and what is the effect when it comes to environmental concerns of today and its effect to the globe in general as we are using this. But I think the other issue also is the fact that now cryptocurrency, which started as something that everyone could participate in, is now something beyond a lot of those who are still dreaming of it. Because today, the type of computers you need to buy just to be able to mine a crypto is now not affordable to the average person. So that early story where each one of us could just open up your computer and have a good chance of creating this value proposition, because the platform is supposed to be, in quotes, egalitarian. But now the egalitarianism has vanished because the...
Yes. Excellent point. Excellent point, Brother Fawzi. I love, and this is really
the
my
very
next
coins.
point.
I was just checking.
Go ahead.
Just checking the lowest value of Bitcoin around the most recent is $68,000. I mean, when it was 0.05 when it started, of course, we talked about the speculation. Then brings me to the issue of what is the effect on gambling on this one, because like I said, a lot of people today still spend their time buying computers, hoping that they'll be able to mine the next Bitcoin. We are doing this, but now because of the change in the computer industry to actually mine Bitcoins, all of these millions or even billions of people who are hoping to make money and still buying computers, spending their money and everything online, trying to do this one, will no more have an opportunity, because these humongous computers owned by the very rich are doing all the crashing, and the ordinary person on the street cannot do it. So we see that if we look at the maslaha proposition of money being available or serving everybody, we now see that this one is again going to where we are serving the very rich. So these are definitely issues that bother my mind when we look at using cryptocurrency.
Yeah. So this is an important point that you led us to, Fawzi, is the fact, well, who is creating and controlling cryptocurrencies? This is a major point here. So we say like, okay, well, it's not being produced or governed by a government, by an official body. So this is a very tricky, and I was asked the same question at University of Science Islam Malaysia when I made this presentation by the fuqaha there, and like, it has to be, and then this is the point that Brother Kashif also raised, saying that, well, shouldn't this be produced by the government, by Baytul Mal, by this and that? So obviously, during the Prophet ﷺ's time, that we did not have a Baytul Mal, and then the Khulafa al-Rashidun did not have any kind of official minting of currency or control. That happened during the Umayyad time. One of the major challenges, and this is where we try to, why it is important to go to the revelation and differentiate between the revelation, the Quran and the Sunnah, and what the principle, the founding principle that they try to establish for us, and our wisdom and history of Muslim think and thought about money and finance and monetary policy, and human history and wisdom and experience about money. I want us to take these statements as part of the overall and present them to these primary sources. So, for example, we're talking about yes, it is. You can make a very strong argument from an Islamic point of view, not because of that. I mean, that Waliul Amr. If you have, and here by Waliul Amr, let's say, a good government that are representative of the people, that is not tyrannical, that is not abusing monetary policy and money printing just to win the next election, or to win the favor of the people, or to win the favor of the army, or whatever it is. If you have a proper government and you have proper Waliul Amr, Muslim ruler, or not necessarily Muslim ruler, but at least a just ruler, who is communicating to the people that the only currency that we will allow in the government in an economy is the officially produced currency. Well, the Islamic point of view here, I would think that if that ruler is just and is truly trying to achieve what is in the best interest of the people, and the decision is well thought and this and that, then it should be respected and obeyed. And if we need, so it has to be a really strong counter argument to get away from and to disobey a rule or a government. Because if you disobey this ruling, then what else will you disobey? Just because you don't like it, because it does not serve my own personal interest. So that's why it's like there's a macro consideration, and there is micro consideration, and there's social lived reality. That I just think are all dimensions of this conversation. So what I'm trying to say here, the critical orientation of the Maqasid methodology is to say, like, look, having a central authority is part of the discussion. It is nothing to be imposed by a fatwa or something like that. It is part of our understanding to achieve the objectives of the Sharia while observing the ahkam and the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are these commands, and what is our experience, and how do we learn from the experiences that we have, and then to arrive at the objective that we want to reach. No accountability. This other point here is that there's sometimes no accountability in cryptocurrency, but again, sometimes depending on the central bank and the authority in a government, sometimes there is no accountability there as well. So that the criteria may not also be fair to apply to cryptocurrency. Not guaranteed. Again, that is not something unique for cryptocurrencies. Fiat currencies has no guaranteed. And again, like I think Brother Kash's point previously, that sometimes you really sit down and talking to fuqaha who should know better. They're talking about nuqud, but their mind is defaulting to amwal. So there is kind of this association. And they just don't connect that both of them not guaranteed, and there's no support or protection. And then here, but one of the things that, okay, so what is the objective? So it's important to see the stated objectives and to hold people accountable to the stated objectives. So sometimes Bitcoins and some other cryptocurrencies, they have stated objectives. They say, like, we're trying to break away from the tyranny of the dollar. They try to say that break away from tyranny of and the hegemony of superpowers. We want to give power to the people. We want to reduce transaction costs. We want to be able to transact freely. So these are important objectives that we really have to pick on and not just take it at face value, but see how it is actually reflected in the governance structure. So let me here kind of jump back and say, okay, well, it's incredibly important that when we talk about the cryptocurrency, is to really just don't take people's comment or statement at face value. And here one, and this is the example that I wanted to mention a bit later, but I'll mention now. So people came out and said, this is a cryptocurrency based on Islamic dinar, and it is going to be backed by precious metals. Okay, good job. Maybe it's a good thing, maybe. You call it Islamic cryptocurrency, or you call it dinar, or you call it halal, or you call it Islamic coin, whatever. Okay, so that's clever marketing, clever branding, but that's just a title. But at the end of the day, I remember one analysis from the practical Muslim Islamic finance guy, somebody I followed on YouTube, and I like everything he says. But in this case, he just spent the time and effort to go through the agreement and the structure of what was being offered. It's like really at the end of the day, few initial founders of this currency have all the control over this currency. So today they say it is backed by gold and silver. Tomorrow they can say it is not, or it is backed at different ratios. So what I'm trying to say here is that we really have to pay attention when we talk about cryptocurrencies. Very, very good attention needs to be paid to the governance structure, to conflict of interest, and why would this people have intrinsic or drive or interest in serving your best interest or my best interest, or to keep the value of the currency stable, or even in the name of doing good. So what if somebody who is, okay, this is a cryptocurrency run by a bunch of amazing Muslims, but they decided that, you know what, there is, a million super hungry people in this Muslim country, and if we just produce, 1,000 extra currencies, and then quietly put it in circulation, we can really help all of these 1 million hungry people to eat and save their lives. What about that? So, and now this point becomes a very important transitional point to say that when governments deal with money and money supply, they do consider the overall well-being of the country, and that's a very tricky thing, even from an Islamic economic point of view, that we do not really discuss properly or enough, which is the role of expansionary monetary policy, contractionary monetary policy, to resolve issues like recessions and economic shocks and so on and so forth, when it is supposedly applied properly. If you're also following a new Keynesian thinking, at least right now, in macroeconomic, we say that there is monetary policy can be used to further overall good. In the case of the Federal Reserve Bank, we say they're trying to have a balance between inflation and unemployment, right? So unemployment is an important social objective. This again, this is a huge area of conversation. I definitely, I think I had a hand raised. I want to make sure that I hear your perspective on everything that's been said so far. Any comment? Oh, inshallah. Dr. Mahdi, تفضل.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I'm gonna try to be a little bit provocative here. So
Yes.
I want you to contradict what I'm gonna be saying here. I'm gonna first divert a little bit, okay, and do some type of analogy here. When we talk, for instance, about environmental issues, okay, there is one measure we always use, which is, for instance, carbon emission. Okay, we always focus on trying to find technique, trying to find ways to reduce carbon emission, carbon footprint. Now, we as Muslims, let's assume that we solve the issue. We taking the plane, the cars, and like nothing issue carbon anymore. We have zero carbon footprint. Is the world going to be better? Are we going to save the environment? Are we going to save the planets by creating a technology that has zero carbon footprint emission? And I bet the answer is no. Because we're going to be traveling everywhere, we're going to be going into small islands where nobody has been there. And so, because it's always gone back to the same issue, is we as Muslims, what is our intent? What are we trying to do? So if we only work for the technology, then at the end of the day, we're just working for ourselves, for our own naps, and trying to do things we're not supposed to do. Or we're trying to do things being oblivious of what is the greater purpose, which is, Day of Judgment and our akhirah. So I'm going to go back now, because I don't think carbon footprint is I'm not saying that we should not care about the environment. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if our intent is just to solve this problem, then we're not going to go anywhere. Okay? Parallel. In an equation, if we are only focusing on the money side, okay, even if we have the purest halal money on earth, is it going to solve any of your issues? Well, maybe some of it, okay? Maybe riba is not going to be that much there. But at the end of the day, our question here is, those are just transactions. Okay, we need transactions to have a better life. We need halal transactions. This is, I'm not denying that. But what's the highest? What is the higher purpose? When we deal with the economy, is our objective to have the purest money, the purest transaction, or are we trying to achieve higher goals? When we live in a society, when we care about our neighbors, when we care about the poor, when we care about, our mothers, sisters, and brothers, does that really matter? So, you see the point here. I'm just trying to say here that, okay, it's very important. If we could, the best is to have gold standard. I think all of us would agree with that. Fiat currency, relying on a government, relying on a technology, relying on something which is not gold, always have its limits. Okay, but the question we are trying to have. So here's my point here. What I'm trying to say. If we have 2 billion Muslims that are not putting their money in a bank, or just what extent you can do, like you have your income, you in and out, but you don't open CDs, you don't stack up your money in the bank, because they're going to use your money to do fractional banking. So if we stop behaving like anybody else on earth, if we start to use our money and invest in a halal way, if we start to use our money and not hoard on it, but do something we as individuals could easily do by investing on a halal way, and stop using those financial institutions. We are like 2 billion people. I'm pretty sure that any Islamic banks, whether it's Morocco, in Egypt, in Pakistan, in the US, anywhere, would be sensitive to our change of behavior. I'm pretty sure that the fractional banking will not work as well if you're not part of the system here. And it doesn't take, it just takes a little bit of education of what are we doing with our money to make the current system worse or collapse.
Yeah.
So,
yes. So the challenge here, so you mentioned, mashallah, very good points, and then and just for the sake of, I'm going to try to focus on one issue, and I love your discussion about the carbon footprint, and one of the things that we say, and you will see Dr. Basma Abdul Ghaffar discuss a lot, we say currently when we discuss, we think of other creations are lesser than humans. While the Quran Kareem, I believe, like from that, the way I read Surah Al-Fatiha, that Rabbul Alameen. So he is the Lord of all and everything that he has created. And the kind of interdependency, the kind of mizan, balance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created means that our survival and well-being and hayat tayyiba depends on treating all of Allah's creation and considering them equally importantly. So that becomes very interesting. Is it equally importantly, human life is more important than anything else? So that becomes a huge area of debate. But at least we're putting more emphasis on the environment. But then, like when you jump, let me just jump to your last point. And so this is another provocative point, is that where exactly do we have this incredibly important, strong position against fractional reserve system? Does it potentially happen also organically? And what happens if you take an economy, a single economy, and then they decided that no more fractional reserve system, as in 100% backed loans? What is the immediate effect that will happen? If money supply shrunk by 60, 70%, what is the immediate impact on the economy? From my understanding of economic, mechanisms, is the immediate impact is that there's a massive recession, a slowdown in economic activities. Maybe you say this is transitional and then we get out of it. But that's a big challenge. And the other kind of point you were alluding, this can happen whether we have a gold system, whether we have this. So one way just to not get to a point where the problem is so complicated and we don't get anywhere. So we say, like, we go back to the example of Nabi Shu'aib, alayhi salam, where he said, look, you are not asked to solve every single problem under the sun. But we are asked to make things better. In uridu illa al-islaha mastata'at. Whatever I'm able, I'm trying to make things better. Now, when I take this, and I would like to, inshallah, kind of, at the try to conclude here, is that this islah can take different forms, different mechanisms in different times and places. So a certain place may go with cryptocurrency. They try their best and they have the right intention, this and that, and we learn from that experience. Another place they're using gold, another place they're using fiat currency, because that is what is the best fit. And then maybe over time we get into better consensus. Well, this is really working better, but for cryptocurrency to work, you need 1, 2, 3, 4. There's like 1,000 different or 1,000,000 different details that needs to work. And that cannot happen just like right now, theoretically thinking about it. It needs to happen when people actually try to implement it in reality. And the people, of course, they are using cryptocurrencies in real life, conditions. So I do realize we have about 5 minutes to this session, and I think I am about a third to a half of this session, which is, it's a good thing. Maybe I'll, if you want this, we can continue, of course, next week, bi'awni ta'ala. and then we can continue this conversation next week, inshallah, and finish this presentation. And I know the brother Dr. Mir apologized. He had something, that prevented him from coming. So alhamdulillah, it worked out okay this way. But this is, I know there was a hand that was raised. I would like to take that before perhaps we can conclude, and then inshallah we will continue this conversation next week, because there is definitely there's a lot more content here that would like us to think about it.
So I had raised my hand. I'm really happy that Dr. Mahdi used a provocative. He provoked us into thinking, and I think it's a very important problem to solve. It's currency. I kind of just to put out the other point of view. Currency is an exceptionally important problem to solve. It's for just to give you an example, if we look at somebody, let's say a janitor in McDonald's in Pakistan, the value he offers is exactly the same as the janitor of McDonald's in New York would be offering, but what they get in exchange is completely different. One person can actually live a life off of what he's getting paid, and the other person won't be able to support his family or himself at all. So this tells us that these currencies are hierarchical, and unless this hierarchy is resolved, it's systematic slavery and it's systematic oppression, where some people are made to offer whatever they have, and the other party can just print money. Just because they control this mechanism, they have the ability to enslave entire nations. So it's an incredibly important problem to solve for Muslims. So it's not as trivial as the classical economic theory might say. And the other point I wanted to say was that at least what Richard Werner has been saying, the money supply does not work like the way we thought it did. Fractional reserve banking doesn't really exist. Banks actually issue money without without you depositing anything. On the other hand, banks are actually required to keep the account separate of the money that they receive and the money that they lend. And the lending money happens out of absolutely if you follow the accounting, at least the way he shows it, they don't need any deposit to create that money. So even if all Muslims decided that they do not want to they don't want to place their money in the banks would still exist, and those banks actually create that hierarchy. They will be able to pump money into the economy and then inflate prices, and those capitalists will get the gains, and the other people have to chase the value by putting in actual effort. So it's a lopsided game where those who are not willing to play by these rules will always be at the losing end.
Now, Jazakallah khair, Akhi Kashif, you raise important, let's say, key important points here. You talked about labor, and again, maybe even this term, which comes straight from capitalist thinking. Maybe we should really think about a different term, and that's really one of the things about the Maqasid methodology, or like what Sheikh Jasser always emphasizes, is pay attention to these terms. They actually mean a lot when you say, because sometimes you're trying to be impersonal about different things. It's just resources, it's labor. It's actually labor for us is sacred act of ibadah, of worship. So it's not just something that we easily dismiss. And so one of the things that we have identified in the re-envisioning Islamic economics and finance is that like I said, like this phenomenon, and then how they interact with each other. So like you said, the currency is an incredibly important one. And then in parallel to that, to this block of thinking, then there is the human beings, ibadullah, and then like we said, the environment, all of Allah's creation. So these are all like, building blocks that needs to integrate with each other. We need to think carefully about them. One of the ideas that we are considering right now is that what is the next phase? We are almost towards the end of this wonderful experience and course. Is one of them is like a full 8-week discussion and conversation concentrated around on money and monetary theory. And with these 3 levels, macro, micro, and social lived reality, to give this topic its due, attention. Now, I want to jump to your next point, and this is something I'm conflicted about. So, Dr. Ildus raised this issue, and many other people, I know Brother Shahadat also resonate with this, that banks create money out of nothing. To the best of my state of knowledge, it can be limited, can be whatever you want to call it, that fractional reserve does play an important role. How big, how small, I do think that it does play an important role. This issue of, well, without even fractional, they can't produce. So where does that money going to come from? My understanding is that still has to come from capital. That founders of, and then they can leverage it, they can do this, whatever. But still, you have to have some kind of capital to start with, and based on this initial capital, you can leverage it and you can create some money. So to say just it can't happen with no backing, with no initial investment or whatsoever, it just really, it's hard for me to accept. Now, one way to get, so this is why it becomes, we're trying to discuss having a whole other course and journey together, discussing money and finance, and is to bring some expert in this area to debate this issue with them, and bring somebody who just really spent the time and effort to research and bring this conversation. One quick footnote here. I know one of the conversation around money created out of, bank and created out of nothing, for example, or just create credit based. For example, one of the references is to this paper by some researchers in the Bank of England. And sometimes, I don't know, at least my experience, as I also worked for the Federal Reserve Bank, long time ago. So, and my supervisor was an important economist at the Federal Reserve Bank Board of Governors. Is that at least in the Federal Reserve Bank system, all 12 branches typically have their own researchers, and these researchers, they can produce papers that are just simply interesting. It doesn't mean that these papers represent the position of that bank or this or that. It is just really a bunch of researchers making papers. I guess they want to bring insights and this and that. And just take it as, that it's more, not as like an official position. Well, I'm not saying that anybody's understanding of these papers is not adequate or anything. This might actually be the right way. This is maybe true, but I am just as where I am right now, from my personal experience, my understanding, my study of macroeconomics, that you cannot just simply create money out of absolutely nothing, even if you would going to need capital. And this is why all the Basel requirements and all the shock treatment is that, and the emphasis that banks have to improve their capital position is because of this to limit exposure, limit counterparty risk, all of this, and which is really goes back to how much credit and credit instruments you can create safely, given some criteria. Wallahu alam. So I know, Brother Shahadat, you have your hand raised, and we are past our time. So I would like, perhaps, if anybody who would like to stay, I can have another 10, 15 minutes, inshallah, of chit chat. But I would like to also make it easy for everybody else to maybe leave. And then, inshallah, the recording, if you can keep the recording, we can, so that nobody misses anything they want to catch up with this a bit later. Allahu alam. Type. So with that, Sister Amreen, would you like to, inshallah, conclude this session?
Sure. The topic of money is something that we can talk for hours, and we can still not, feel quenched that this topic is so much vast, and since it constitutes most of our life, like every day we transact, and money is such an integral part of our life. So thank you everyone for your time, and for Dr. Zaid for such a wonderful presentation. Inshallah, I wish you all best of luck for the coming week. And with that, we conclude the session for today with the recitation of Surah Al-Asr.
Jazakallah khair, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I gotta stop the sharing, and I'm still here with you. And I'm really sorry. Sometimes I know people leave comments, and I usually rely on Sister